She said she needed a break. No contact, she added, calm. Deliberate, like she'd practiced that line in her head a dozen times before saying it out loud. No calls, no texts, no random messages, no how are you doing, just silence. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just sat there across from her, in that same coffee shop we'd been going to for years, watching her stir a cup she'd already stopped drinking from. The sunlight hit her hair just right. The background hum of soft music, quiet chatter, the smell of roasted beans, all of it stayed the same. The only thing different was her voice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was steady, almost professional, like someone closing a chapter in an orderly way. She said, "It's not you. I just need time to figure myself out." That phrase, figure myself out, it's universal. It sounds deep, but it's really just emotional camouflage. People don't need space to find themselves. They need space to leave you without feeling guilty. I asked her one question. Is there someone else? She looked up, smiled faintly, and said no, too fast, too smooth. But there was a half-second delay in her eyes. That's all it took. You can tell when a person's truth gets caught behind their teeth. I didn't push it. I didn't make a scene. When someone's already decided to leave, your words just become background noise. So I nodded, paid for our drinks, and walked her to her car. She gave me a hug, short, polite, the kind of hug you give a coworker before quitting a job. It wasn't warm. It was final. Her perfume lingered when she pulled away. I stood there for a while after she left, watching her car disappear into the afternoon traffic, realizing that sometimes silence doesn't heal anything. It just confirms what's already over. The first few days after that were strange. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. I followed the rules she set. No contact. Not a single message. My phone stayed silent, almost unnervingly so. I went to work, hit the gym, tried to sleep. Every night, I'd unlock my phone out of habit, scroll through old texts, read them like a ghost story. Her social media stayed blank too. No new pictures, no updates, nothing. It wasn't that she'd gone offline. It was that she'd erased herself from the version of life that included me. I told myself she probably just needed time, that maybe she was actually doing what she said, thinking, reflecting, growing. But deep down, I knew better. No contact isn't about growth. It's about transition. People don't go silent to heal, they go silent to replace. They need the quiet to rewrite their story without you in it. And my mistake was giving her that silence, thinking it meant hope. There was one night, around the 10th day, where I almost texted her. Just a simple message, "Are you okay?" I typed it out, stared at it, then deleted it before hitting send. Because I realized I wasn't looking for an answer. I was looking for reassurance. And that's not love anymore, that's denial. I sat there on the couch, the TV flickering in the background, holding my phone face down on my lap, and understood something I hadn't before. When someone says they need space to find themselves, what they really mean is they're already halfway gone. I kept waiting anyway, because that's what people do when they don't know how to let go. They mistake silence for healing. But silence doesn't fix what's broken. It just teaches you how to live with the echo of something that used to matter. 2 weeks passed in silence. Everything was still, almost unnaturally so. I worked 8, went to the gym, came home and slept the same loop, day after day. No texts, no calls, no updates, nothing from her, nothing about her, not a single sign of someone reflecting. I stayed quiet, not because I believed silence would bring her back, but because I wanted to see what she would do with the distance she'd asked for. Sometimes silence tells you more than words ever could. On the 14th day, around 12:37 p.m., I was at work. Just another Thursday. People chatting, grabbing lunch, laughter echoing from the next room. I was signing some papers when my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. Lena was tagged in a post by Karen Williams, her mother. The kind of woman who loved to share everything, dinners, birthdays, even small weekend trips. She wasn't mean, just a chronic overshare. I didn't open the notification right away. Something inside me hesitated. There's a particular kind of intuition that comes before a truth you don't want to see an hour later. During lunch break, I finally opened it. The image loaded slowly. At first, just a blur of colors, then shapes, faces, sunlight. A beach, blue sky, soft waves, and right in the middle, there she was. Lena, holding an orange cocktail, hair tied up, laughing under the sun. Free, relaxed, completely at ease. Not a trace of confusion or sadness. No sign of someone who needed time to think. She looked like she'd already found what she was looking for. Her mum's caption read, "So proud of my daughter for taking time to relax and breathe again." I read it twice. Breathe again. That phrase stuck. It was loaded. You don't say that unless you think the person was suffocating before. And suddenly, I understood what story she'd told her mum, or maybe what her mum wanted to believe. Either way, in that story, I was the problem. I was the reason she couldn't breathe. Then I noticed it. A hand resting casually on her waist. Confident, natural, familiar. I zoomed out. A man, tan, muscular, smiling. Not awkward, not distant. He looked comfortable there, like he belonged. That was the moment everything aligned in my head. Her break wasn't about finding herself. It was a transition. A bridge from me to him, neat, quiet, and perfectly timed. She didn't lie, not exactly. She just omitted the part where she'd already moved on. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't comment. I didn't even tell a friend. Because people like her, they feed on reactions. They want to know you're watching, that they still matter. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. I simply saved the photo, the date, time, caption, not because I planned to use it, but because I wanted proof. Memory is emotional. Data is clean. Then I scrolled through the comments. The usual nonsense. She looks so happy. She deserves this break. One friend commented, "She's been through a lot. She deserves to rest." And under that, her mother replied, "Yes, she's endured so much." I stared at that line. Endured so much. I actually laughed, a quiet, bitter laugh. Not because it hurt, but because it fit too perfectly. Every piece of her story aligned. The break, the silence, the healing trip. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. I put my phone down and leaned back in my chair. I didn't feel angry, just clear. When you finally see the full picture, anger doesn't have room to grow. It gets replaced by clarity, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't shake, just is. That evening, I looked at the photo again while sitting in my apartment. She looked genuinely happy, in a way she never did near the end with me. I remembered the things she used to say, that she felt suffocated, that I asked too many questions, that I worried too much. I thought it was care. She called it control. And now, looking at that smile, I understood. She didn't want care. She wanted absence. I didn't know who the guy was, and honestly, I didn't need to. What mattered was realizing I no longer existed in her version of life. So I deleted Facebook, not out of spite, but to cut the last thread connecting me to a story I wasn't part of anymore. The next day, I went to work as usual. I didn't think about her much, or maybe I did, but in that detached way you think about something that used to hurt but doesn't anymore. I understood now. She hadn't betrayed me. She'd just chosen the cleanest way to leave. No contact wasn't reflection. It was preparation. That evening, I drove home through downtown traffic. The city lights flickered across the windshield. People rushed, horns blared, life kept moving. Somewhere out there, she was probably laughing, maybe holding that same drink. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not because I forgave her, but because I no longer needed her to be anything other than what she really was. Before bed, I opened my phone one last time, scrolled through our old photos, then deleted them, all of them. I didn't hesitate. I didn't flinch. Not because I hated her, but because I finally accepted that the silence she wanted was never about healing. It was her way of teaching me how to disappear from her life. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. And when I woke up the next morning, the air felt different, lighter. She wanted silence. Now she had it. But this time, it wasn't hers to control. It was mine. About a week after deleting Facebook, life started to settle into a strange rhythm. Not better, not worse, just quieter. I wasn't angry anymore, and I wasn't waiting either. My days ran on autopilot. Work, gym, dinner, sleep. The kind of routine you fall into when you've stopped expecting anything new. I thought the story had ended, but sometimes silence isn't the end. It's just the calm before the truth finally finds its way to you. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning up the kitchen when my phone buzzed. A message request, Megan. Her name popped up and I froze for a second. Megan was Lena's best friend. We'd hung out together plenty of times, double dates, small parties, lazy Sunday She was the type who always laughed loud, always defended Lena no matter what. Since the breakup, we hadn't spoken at all. So seeing her name again felt strange. Sorry for reaching out, her first message read. But I think you deserve to know something. And honestly, I can't keep watching Lena tell a story that isn't true. I stared at the screen for a while, unsure whether to open the rest. Then I did. She's been telling people you were controlling, that you made her anxious, that she felt trapped, that you didn't let her have her own life. She told everyone that's why she needed the break. But the truth is, while you were keeping your distance, she wasn't figuring herself out. She was with someone else. The guy from the beach photo. They'd been talking for weeks before she asked for space. I know because I saw them together at a friend's party. She introduced him as her close friend. I didn't think much of it back then, but now it all makes sense. I didn't react. Not really. No anger, no shock, just a quiet confirmation of what I'd already known somewhere deep down. Still, I kept reading. I'm not trying to make things worse, Megan continued. I just feel like it's wrong for her to keep painting you as the bad guy. You weren't perfect. No one is. But you didn't deserve that. You never hurt her. You cared. And she's twisting that into something ugly because it's easier for her to move on that way. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. They didn't burn. They didn't cut. They just settled, like puzzle pieces falling quietly into place. I felt a strange sense of relief, not happiness, not closure, but something cleaner, clarity. I typed back a short reply. Thanks for telling me. I guess the truth always finds its way out eventually. Megan answered almost instantly. I'm not taking sides. I just thought you should know. Because she's never going to tell you herself. I looked at that message for a long time before setting my phone down. In my head, all the fragments began to align. Her careful wording that day at the café. Her insistence on no contact. The way her mum's caption said she'd been through so much. It was all part of a narrative, not spontaneous, but crafted. A version of events that made her the one who needed healing, and me the reason she needed it. I didn't hate her for it. Hate takes energy, and I was done giving her any. The truth didn't hurt, it just clarified the silence. People rewrite stories to survive their own guilt. That's human. I couldn't change how she wanted to remember me, but at least now, I knew the version that actually happened that night. I pulled out a small box from my closet, one filled with old things, movie tickets, a few photos, a note she once left on my fridge that said, "Don't skip breakfast, okay?" I looked at it for a while, then threw everything into the trash. No bitterness, no drama, just clearing space for something that wasn't built on lies. Later, I stood by the window, watching the city lights stretch across the skyline. The air was cool, the street below full of motion, people moving forward like they always do. And I realized something. Sometimes you don't need an apology to move on. You just need one small piece of truth, enough to stop you from looking back. That night, I didn't dream about her. For the first time in a long time, my head was quiet. My chest didn't ache. And I understood there are two kinds of silence in this world. The kind people use to run away, and the kind you choose when you're finally ready to let go. After Megan's message, everything inside me went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that follows a shock, more like the kind that comes when every unanswered question finally finds its place. I didn't feel the need to analyze anything anymore. No anger, no curiosity, no blame. Just acceptance. That afternoon, I sat by the window, sunlight filtering through the blinds, dust floating in the air like slow-moving thoughts, and I remember thinking, so this is it. And strangely enough, it felt lighter than I expected. Over the next few days, I started changing small things. I woke up earlier, worked out longer, cooked real food instead of ordering takeout. I opened the windows every morning, let the air in, played soft music while making breakfast. Every simple action, opening blinds, washing dishes, folding shirts, felt like a way of reintroducing myself to my own life. I realized that maybe the hardest part of losing someone isn't losing them. It's losing the version of yourself that revolved around them. I had spent so long adjusting to her moods, filtering myself so she wouldn't get upset, thinking care meant control. When she left, I was left with the silence of someone I didn't fully recognize anymore. Sometimes I'd stumble across her photos online, reposted by mutual friends. or popping up in old memories. The first few times, it still hit me. That small twist in the chest. But then I stopped lingering. I didn't block her. I didn't stare. I just scrolled past. Because I finally understood pain isn't caused by the picture. It's caused by the meaning you attach to it. And she didn't carry meaning for me anymore. I began spending time doing things I'd always postponed. I took a weekend design course. I went hiking alone. Drove out of the city just to have coffee somewhere quiet. Not to prove I was fine, but because, for the first time, I actually was. Some nights I'd come home, cook dinner, pour a glass of wine, and sit in silence while a jazz record played in the background. Not lonely, not empty, just peaceful. The kind of peace you choose, not the kind you're forced into. One evening, while cleaning out my inbox, I came across an old email from her. The subject line read, "Don't ever forget me." I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without opening. My hand didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. It was a small action, but it felt huge, like finally cutting the last invisible string. I didn't delete it out of anger. I deleted it because it didn't belong in my life anymore. I've learned something about forgiveness. It's not always about hearing "I'm sorry." Sometimes forgiveness is simply reaching the point where you no longer need to be understood. When you can look back at everything, the good, the bad, the nights that broke you, and say, yeah, that happened. But it doesn't define me anymore. That's not forgiving her. That's forgiving myself for holding on too long, for loving too much, for waiting when there was nothing left to wait for. And maybe that's what freedom really is. Not running away to find yourself, but letting go without bitterness. That night, I took a walk through the quiet streets near my apartment. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens nearby. I watched the lights glowing in windows above me. Lives still happening, people laughing, arguing, loving, existing. The world doesn't stop just because someone walks out of your life. It keeps moving, and eventually, so do you. I smiled. Just a small one, but it was real. Not because I'd forgotten her, but because I'd accepted everything exactly as it was. She once said, "I need time to find myself." I think, in the end, I was the one who truly did. 3 months later, I saw her again. Not in some dramatic, movie-like moment. Just a regular Thursday afternoon at a small downtown coffee shop. I was standing in line, half focused on my phone, when I heard a familiar voice order from the counter. Soft, steady, slightly drawn out at the end of each sentence. Her voice. I looked up. And there she was, Lena. Her hair was shorter now, lightly curled at the ends, just brushing her shoulders. She wore a cream sweater, dark jeans, and I noticed the same small earrings I'd given her for her birthday last year. She looked good. Different though. Not happier, not sadder, just ... altered. There was something new in her eyes. Maybe distance, maybe effort. She noticed me almost immediately. For 2 seconds, her face froze. Then came the polite American smile, the kind people give when they run into someone from a past life, friendly enough to be civil, but not enough to invite emotion. I gave her a small nod in return. No step forward, no step back, just ... acknowledgement. When she finished paying and turned to leave, our eyes met again. She hesitated, then slowly walked over. Careful steps, the kind you take when you're not sure what version of a person you're about to face. "Hey," she said quietly. It's been a while. Yeah, I replied. It has. There was a pause between us, not awkward, just empty. The kind of silence that happens when two people have already said everything there ever was to say. You look different, she said after a moment. Different good or different bad? I asked, half smiling. She gave a small laugh, real but faint. Different, peaceful? I nodded. Guess time has a way of teaching people things. She looked down at her coffee, avoiding my gaze, and smiled again, soft, almost regretful. There was something unspoken there, but I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Because for the first time since everything ended, I didn't feel the rush of old emotions. My chest didn't tighten, my pulse didn't jump. I just felt ... normal. And that normalcy told me more than words ever could. I was over it before leaving. She said, I heard Megan talk to you. I don't know what she said, but I'm sorry if you ever felt like I was unfair. I looked at her, steady, calm. It's okay, I said. We all have our own ways of surviving things. You did what you thought you needed to do. She nodded, exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for months. Then she smiled one last time, whispered a quiet take care, and turned toward the door. The sunlight hit her hair as she stepped outside, and the little bell above the cafe door chimed as it closed behind her. I stood there for a moment, just watching. Not longing, not hurting, just noticing. Watching someone who used to mean everything walk away, like any other person on any other day. I grabbed my coffee and stepped outside. The street was busy, cars honking, people rushing by, life going on as it always does. But inside my head, it was quiet. Not the silence of loss, but the kind that feels clean, like air after a storm. And in that stillness, I realized maybe this was the real ending. Not a fight, not a confession, not a second chance, just two people meeting again. No spark, no pain, no weight left between them, and that was enough. After that encounter, I didn't think about her much anymore. Not because I forced myself to forget, but because she simply stopped taking up space in my mind. What we had, with all its emotions and pain, had settled into something flat, almost quiet. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't nostalgia. It was just ... acceptance. Like hearing an old song you once loved, you still recognize the tune, but it doesn't move you the same way anymore. I started observing myself more. Some nights, I'd sit alone in my apartment, lights off, just watching the city glow through the window, and think about everything the way I'd loved, the way I'd feared, the way I'd held on too tightly. I realized that most of the pain hadn't come from her. It had come from me, from my own expectations. I'd believed love would save me, that it would make life make sense. But the truth is, love only mirrors what's already inside you, your insecurities, your fears, the parts of you you've been avoiding. I didn't hate her. She was just human, flawed, confused, defensive. And so was I. We were two people who met at the wrong time, each carrying our own baggage, trying to love through it and failing in our own ways. Understanding that didn't make me bitter. It made me calm. I began working harder, not to fill a void, but because for the first time, I genuinely wanted to move forward. I took a night course. I started reading again. I learned how to enjoy silence without feeling empty. On weekends, I'd drive out of the city, find a quiet lake or hiking trail, and just sit there for hours. And for the first time in years, I felt something incredibly rare, contentment. I didn't need anyone next to me to feel alive. I just was. One evening, I ran into Megan again. We talked for a bit. Nothing deep, no mention of the past. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You've changed." I smiled. "In what way?" She thought for a moment, then said, "You look like someone who finally knows what he wants." And for once, I didn't deflect. I just nodded, because maybe she was right. When you go through heartbreak, you think you're losing pieces of yourself. But sometimes, that's exactly how you find the parts that were missing all along. I no longer saw myself as the victim. She wasn't the villain. I wasn't the hero. We were just two people who lived, learned, and grew. That's all. A few months later, I started dating again. A woman different from her, calm, quiet, kind. She loved reading, spoke softly, and never rushed things. I told her early on, I made a lot of mistakes before. So this time, I want to go slow. She smiled and said, "Good. The things worth keeping usually take time. I don't know what the future holds, and I'm okay with that. The difference now is that I no longer fear being alone. I don't need love to prove I'm worthy of it. I just need to live in a way that feels honest to who I am." That night, I stood on my balcony, watching the lights blur into streaks along the street below. The air was cool, carrying a faint smell of smoke and rain. I took a deep breath and felt something loosen in my chest. Not happiness, not excitement, but peace. The kind of peace that comes only after you've asked every question, faced every silence, and stopped needing answers. And then it hit me. She had been right, in her own way. I did need time to find myself. She just never realized. The person who truly found themselves, in the end, wasn't her. It was me. 2 years passed. Not quickly, not slowly. Just enough time for life to change without me realizing it. I still lived in the same apartment. Still ordered the same black coffee every morning at the corner café, and still took the same route to work. Nothing about the outside looked different, but everything inside me had shifted. That café used to hold so many memories of her. It's where I'd first spilled coffee on my sleeve. And she laughed while wiping it off with a napkin. That easy, carefree laugh that made me think, this must mean something. Back then, I believed that was the start of everything. Now, sitting by the same window, I saw it differently. It wasn't the start of a great love story. It was simply a moment, fleeting, ordinary, beautiful because it happened, not because it lasted. Time has this strange way of healing people. It doesn't erase what happened. It just softens the edges. The memories don't vanish. They just stop hurting. For a long time, I thought peace meant forgetting. But I learned that real peace isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without pain. It's when you can tell your story without anger, without pride, without the need for anyone to take your side. It's when you look back and realize that everything that once broke you also built you. Sometimes I catch myself wondering how she's doing. Maybe she's happy, maybe not. Maybe she found what she was looking for. Either way, I hope she did. Not because I miss her, but because I don't need to hate her anymore. Hatred keeps you tied to what's already gone. And I've worked too hard to let go, every now and then. I meet people who remind me of who we were, young, in love, reckless, thinking that love alone could fix everything. They tell me their stories, their heartbreaks, their confusion. I don't tell them, be strong or you'll get over it, because I know healing doesn't need advice. It just needs time. You can't shortcut pain. You have to walk through it, step by step, until it loses its power over you. That's what growing up really is. Not loving better, not trusting faster, but learning to let go without bitterness. Maturity isn't about avoiding pain. It's about carrying it differently. I've built a quiet, steady life now. I have a job I actually care about, a few real friends, a routine that feels like mine. I still take evening walks, still make coffee in the mornings, still listen to the same old jazz records that once made me ache. Except now, they don't hurt. They just ... play. I don't skip the songs that remind me of her anymore. I let them run their course because they're part of the story. Sometimes, late at night, I'll stand on my balcony and look at the city lights below. And I think about everyone who's passed through my life, the ones I loved, the ones I hurt, the ones who stayed too long or left too soon. And I realize something simple. They all mattered. Every person left a mark. Every chapter added something to who I am now. If I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. Not the mistakes, not the heartbreak, not the nights I couldn't sleep. Because those moments, the messy ones, the painful ones, are the ones that taught me how to stand alone. I don't need grand happiness anymore. I don't chase forever. I just want to live truthfully, slow enough to notice small things, strong enough to face the quiet, and grateful enough to keep moving even when it hurts. And maybe that's what she meant all along when she said she needed time to find herself. Back then, I didn't understand. Now, I do. We both found ourselves just not together. As I walked out of the café that evening, the city lights flickered across the wet pavement. A cool breeze brushed against my face, carrying that crisp scent of fall. I slipped my hands into my jacket pockets and kept walking. Not fast, not slow, just steady. And if someone were to ask me now, do you still think about her? I'd smile, not sad, not wistful, and say, yeah, but only as someone who once walked with me for a while. Then I'd keep walking. No looking back. No what if. No bitterness. Just peace. Because sometimes the best kind of ending is simply knowing that you've made it through and you're okay.